Welcome to Midlife Clarity with Dr. Tracy Page, a podcast for women over 40, navigating hormones, metabolism, strength, and confidence in midlife. Midlife is the moment you start asking bigger questions and expecting better answers. This is where we stop minimizing symptoms, dismissing perimenopause and menopause changes, second-guessing ourselves, and accepting this is just how it is. Instead, we get informed. We get curious. We get clear. Because midlife isn't about hot flashes or hormone shifts. It's about energy, strength, metabolism, relationships, identity, purpose, healthy aging. On this podcast, Dr. Tracy Page blends evidence-based medical insight with honest conversations to help you understand what's happening in your body, support your hormones, strengthen your metabolism, and build lasting confidence in this next chapter. You deserve clarity about your health, and clarity changes everything. Here's Dr. Tracy Page.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Page. Welcome to the podcast, Midlife Clarity. Today I want to talk to you about why your GLP-1 medication stopped working and what you can do about it. So, raise your hand if this sounds familiar to you. You started a GLP-1 medication. Maybe it was semaglutide, which is also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. One is for prediabetes and one is for weight loss. Or maybe it was tirzepatide, which is also known as Mounjaro for diabetes or Zepbound for weight loss. All of them are FDA approved. And you've been on it for a few months. And maybe your results were incredible. The appetite suppression felt like a superpower. I always say that the food noise or food chatter, it went away. That's what a lot of my patients tell me. The scale is moving. And for some of my patients, and you might be this one too, you felt like hopeful for the first time in years that your body could actually lose weight. But then it stopped. I see this all the time in my practice. The scale didn't just slow down, it stopped. Or worse, the patient started gaining weight back. You're eating less than you ever had before, and all of a sudden now you're exhausted. You feel puffy. You have zero interest in sex, zero energy, and zero motivation. And when my patient saw me, her doctor had suggested to add another medication to help her. So if this is you, or you notice that the scale has slowed down and you're having trouble and don't understand why, I need you to hear this. You're not failing your medication. Your medication is actually failing to address what actually is going on in your body. And today, we're going to change that. So welcome back to Midlife Clarity. This is where we don't settle for just Band-Aids. We want root cause solutions, and they're there to be found, and we're going to go over them today. So meet my patient. As you know, I change the names. I take bits and pieces from different patients to make up a patient case. And this patient we're going to call Diane. Let me introduce you to Diane. She's 54 years old. She works from home. She has a high-stress job. She came in with three main complaints. Her weight loss had completely stalled despite being on a GLP-1 medication that was working. She had zero sex drive, and she was dealing with persistent puffiness and fluid retention that was worse whenever she slept poorly. She had previously been on some supplements for cortisol, and these were to help her adrenal glands manage chronic stress, and she had recently stopped them. And almost immediately, she noticed things got worse. She was also on an antidepressant called Paxil, and she had a history of thyroid dysfunction. She had a copper IUD, and she had a history of fibroids. Here's what stuck with me about Diane. She was genuinely trying. She was trying. She was on a GLP-1. She was motivated. She was showing up despite being stressed and tired, but her body was in a state of biological resistance, and nobody had helped her figure out why. Let's look at Diane's labs and her full picture. So here's what her workup revealed and what each number means, because you may have some of these numbers yourself, and it helps us understand why she was on a plateau. First of all, her thyroid. So her free T3 was 2.5. This is low. Optimal is about 3.5 to 4.2 based on the lab standards that we use, and every lab is different. So this is active thyroid hormone, and this runs your metabolism. Her free T4 was low, insufficient, raw material to convert into active T3. You need free T4 to make T3. And her TSH was normal, which is exactly why this pattern gets missed all the time on standard labs. So often we just check a TSH, and I always say it's like only checking one of 4 tires on your car. Her hormones, her estrogen, which we measure estradiol, was 51, down from 120, so there was a significant decline, driving symptoms. Her progesterone was low, unbalanced against estrogen, so it was contributing to fluid retention and her mood. And her testosterone was 15, which is low. It dropped from 33. Her libido, her energy, her muscle mass was all affected. What do we see metabolically? So her glucose had improved. Her GLP-1 was helping here, as was her diet. Her hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of her blood sugar over the last 3 months, had improved, and there was a positive trend going down. I like most of my patients to be between 4.9 and 5.2. And her level was just above 5.3. She was at 5.4. Her protein intake was low. There was a critical gap that was actively blocking her weight loss, and we're going to talk about this more. And cardiometabolically, her advanced panel showed an LDL particle count of 1435, which was high. It was elevated despite her successful weight loss. So her vascular risk still remained. And her HDL was low, which was insufficient cardioprotective cholesterol. So that HDL cholesterol is so important for protecting us, and hers was not high enough. Her NPO myeloperoxidase, in other words, that's inflammation in the vasculature, was elevated. So she had active vascular inflammation occurring. And we also looked at her micronutrients. Her vitamin D3 was low at 28, low because we consider optimal for metabolism and immune function to be between 60 and closer to 80. Her B12 was 1159, which was slightly high due to supplementation, but not a concern. But we'll monitor her because she still was in what we consider the normal range. Now, here's the thing I want you to notice. Diane's glucose and hemoglobin A1C are actually improving. The GLP-1 is doing its part of the job, but her weight has stalled. Her inflammation is elevated. Her thyroid is suppressed. Her sex hormones have fallen off the cliff, and her protein is too low to support the muscle mass she needs to keep her metabolism running. So this is not a dose problem. This is not a lack of medication problem. This is really a system problem. Okay, so why GLP-1s plateau? Why does this happen? Why don't they just continue working? And do you always have to go up in dose to continue to get weight loss? So here's the education block. Understanding the biology of stalled weight loss will really help you as you're working on your own weight loss journey, whether or not you're using a GLP-1 or no medication. So let's get into the real science of what's happening in Diane's body. Because this is where most people, and honestly, most medical professionals, get it wrong. And I think I got it wrong too when I first started. Like, I have seen a lot of patients. I've had the privilege to take care of many patients, and they have taught me so much about the mechanisms of weight loss, the foundational tools of weight loss, and what to do when you hit a plateau. So GLP-1 receptor agonists are powerful medications. They are not metabolic free passes. They work with your biology, and when your biology is fighting back, the medication will always lose. So reason number 1, you're eating less, but you're eating wrong. The GLP-1 medications dramatically suppress our appetite. That's the point of the medication. But what happens when a 54-year-old woman eats dramatically less without making sure that what she does eat is almost entirely protein? Kind of think of it this way. Think of your metabolism as a campfire. The GLP-1 is reducing how much wood, which would be food, you can put on. But if the wood you're putting on is damp and low quality, the fire gets smaller, not hotter. Eventually, the fire starts to go out. So that's what happens when we don't put quality food in. When protein intake drops too low, your body breaks down muscle to meet its amino acid requirements. Less muscle means a lower resting metabolic rate. A lower metabolic rate means fewer calories are burned at rest. And fewer calories burned at rest means even on a GLP-1, the scale stops moving. Or worse, you start losing the very tissue you need to keep the weight off long term, which is muscle. And I always say muscle is the endocrine organ. So Protein requirements on a GLP-1. The minimum amount of protein you should be getting is 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight daily to preserve your muscle. Every pound of muscle lost reduces resting metabolism by approximately 6 to 10 calories per day. Compounding over months, that can be pretty significant. Women over 50 are already losing 1 to 2% of muscle mass per year just naturally, just from aging. So inadequate protein on a GLP-1 dramatically accelerates this loss. Studies on a GLP-1 plus inadequate protein show up to 39% of total weight loss can come from lean muscle mass, not fat, without strategic protein intake. So think about this. If you lose your muscle, but you don't lose body fat, sure, you'll take up less space, but you'll be skinny fat. And it does not look good, and it certainly isn't good for you, and it doesn't feel good. So adequate protein on a GLP-1 preserves muscle, maintains resting metabolic rate, and sustains weight loss beyond the initial phase. Diane's protein was low, not a little low. It was clinically insufficient. This single factor is likely contributing to more of her plateau than any other variable, and one she can fix. Now, I have some patients that have been on semaglutide, Wegovy for weight loss, and they've been on tirzepatide, which is Zepbound. And I will tell you that if their appetite is suppressed too low, this is the number one thing that happens. The scale stops moving. They're eating less. They're not eating protein. They say, I have no appetite. And then we see them either lose muscle or we see them not lose weight at all. Reason number 2 why the scale stopped for Diane. Her thyroid was quietly shutting down the furnace. So Diane's TSH was normal. And if her doctor only checked her TSH, which is the most standard panels, that's what they do, they would have told her her thyroid was fine. But her free T3 was only 2.5. That's pretty low. And free T3 is the hormone that actually runs your metabolism. Think of the thyroid system as a thermostat and a furnace. TSH is a thermostat reading. It tells you what the setting is. Free T3 is the actual heat coming out of the furnace. Diane's thermostat looked fine, but her furnace was running at half capacity. There was no heat. And why does this happen? It's because T3, the active form, had to be converted from T4, the storage form. And that conversion requires adequate calories, adequate protein, low inflammation, and low cortisol. When any of those factors are compromised, and in Diane's case, all of them were, the body preferentially makes something called reverse T3 instead. Now, reverse T3 is a metabolic decoy. That's how I think about it. It occupies the thyroid receptor, but does nothing. It's a parking spot taken by a car that will never move. Or sometimes I explain it to my patients this way. Free T3 and reverse T3 are twins. There's only one seat at school. When reverse T3 sits there, it does nothing. It sleeps. And when free T3 sits there, it gets all its homework done. It's a superstar, runs track. It just has so much energy. And that's why we need those thyroid receptors to see free T. So free T3 optimal range is 3.5 to 4.2. For metabolic function, Diane's was at 2.5, which represents roughly 30 to 40% below optimal. Her low T3 state reduces basal metabolic rate by about 15 and up to 40%, and this alone can fully account for a weight loss plateau. So you have to know what your thyroid numbers are if you're on a weight loss plateau, or even before you start losing weight. Like I said, check all 4 tires, all the numbers. Free T3, free T4, reverse T3, TSH, and then you have your 2 spare tires, which is your TPO antibody and your TG, or thyroglobulin antibody. Calorie restriction and low T3 is recognized as physiological combination that makes the body aggressively defend fat stores. So when you calorie restrict, which you think is going to help you lose weight, and your T3 is low, your body is going to purposely hold on to body fat. It is protecting itself. Normally, TSH with a low free T3 occurs in up to 40% of clinically hypothyroid women, and standard thyroid panels miss this entirely when they only check a TSH, and if TSH is high, then they only check a free T4. GLP-1 medications do not correct underlying thyroid suppression. Appetite reduction without thyroid optimization leads to metabolic adaptation, and that's what's happening to her. Her Metabolic system is adapting to its environment. A normal TSH does not mean a healthy thyroid. That's super important here. It means the pituitary is satisfied. Your metabolism requires more than just that number. Okay? Reason number 3 why she's not losing weight. Cortisol is holding the weight on. Diane stopped her cortisol support supplements, and almost immediately everything got worse. The puffiness increased, the scale moved in the wrong direction, and the fatigue deepened, and all of that was not a coincidence. Cortisol is your body's emergency response system. Kind of think of it that way. When it's chronically elevated, as it is under constant stress, and there's a lot of stress out there, it's like the fire alarm is going off nonstop. Your body cannot focus on anything other than surviving that alarm. Fat burning, that's a luxury. Repair, a luxury. Sex drive, an absolute luxury. The body is in survival mode and it holds on to every calorie it can, and it doesn't want to function in these other departments. There's a specific physiological mechanism at play here with Diane's puffiness. Elevated cortisol increases a hormone called aldosterone, which tells the kidneys to hold onto sodium and water. This results in what we see on her, which is fluid retention. The puffy, inflamed feeling that gets worse with poor sleep and worse with stress. It's not fat, but it adds to weight gain and it adds to the scale, which doesn't make her happy. And it makes people feel like failures when they actually are just cortisol flooded. Now, I'm not saying she hasn't gained any weight back, but this is certainly not helping her in adding to the weight on the scale. Chronic elevated cortisol suppresses T3 conversion by up to 20 to 30%, worsening the thyroid suppression already present that we're seeing. Here's another statistic. Cortisol and insulin together promote preferential fat storage in the abdomen, even with a calorie deficit. So she's eating less than she ever has before, but she has high cortisol, and if she has high insulin, it's going to promote that she holds fat in her abdomen. Cortisol-driven fluid retention can account for 2 to 5 additional pounds on the scale independent of fat mass. And poor sleep, which is Diane's trigger, raises cortisol by 15 and up to 37% the following day. This creates a vicious cycle of disrupted sleep. More cortisol, more water retention, worse sleep. Her HPA axis dysregulation, so hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, that's what HPA stands for. The cortisol system is found in up to 90% of women who report chronic high stress with physical symptoms. They have dysregulation. So 90% of women, and I see this in my practice all the time, women take care of everything. Women take care of everybody. Women make sure everything happens. And they usually are under a lot of stress and not taking care of themselves. Okay, so what's her reason for the scales to stop moving? The SSRI, nobody talked to her about. So this is the one that I want to highlight specifically because it was the biggest miss, or one of the biggest misses, I should say, in Diane's care. And it's one of the most common misses I see in women on antidepressants who are also trying to lose weight and restore libido. So Diane is on Paxil, for depression. Paxil belongs to a class of antidepressants called SSRIs. And Paxil specifically is one of the most potent libido killers and weight-promoting gainers in the entire class of antidepressants. So Paxil is associated with the highest rate of sexual dysfunction in all the SSRIs. Up to 70% of patients report significant reduction in libido. SSRIs are, as a class, cause weight gain or weight resistance in approximately 25, and you can't believe this, up to 65% of patients, depending on the specific agent and the dose. Paxil specifically is associated with an average weight gain of 2 to 6 pounds every year and can cause weight resistance that is independent of calorie intake. So SSRIs plus a GLP-1, the weight-promoting effects of SSRIs, can partially blunt the GLP-1 outcomes. The combination is understudied and underdiscussed, but it does exist. And I've seen it in the clinic. I get someone off their SSRI. I never start with that, but as they get better and healthier and their hormones are balanced and they feel good, they actually come to me and want to get off of it, not realizing that it is one of the reasons that their sex drive is so low and it's also preventing weight loss. But eventually we do talk about it. because it's important for them to make informed decisions. So SSRI-induced sexual dysfunction does not improve simply by just addressing hormones. The root cause must be acknowledged. Alternatives have to be discussed, because if we don't remove it, I can balance her hormones all day long, make sure her testosterone is good, and her libido may still be poor. So I'm not saying Diane should stop her Paxil right now. Her mental health does need to be protected, but this conversation needs to happen openly, because optimizing of testosterone and progesterone while leaving her on a libido-crushing antidepressant won't solve her problem. There are alternative antidepressants with far more favorable profiles for both weight and sexual function, and that conversation was long overdue, and we did have it. Okay, so let's talk about the cardiometabolic warning. So she's having weight loss. She was having weight loss. It's plateaued, but she had a significant amount of weight loss already. But that doesn't always equal metabolic health. So this is really important. The number that's hiding behind the scale. I want to pause here and talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention in the GLP-1 conversation, because there's a myth circulating around that if you're losing weight, your heart's healthy, your cardiovascular function has improved. And sometimes it has, but in Diane's case, it wasn't the truth. Diane's LDL particle, her LDL particle count was 1,435. That's high. And her NPO, myeloperoxidase, the real-time vascular inflammation marker, was elevated. So meaning she had active arterial inflammation, which is occurring as she's losing weight. And even as the scale has been moving downward, she's still having this. So think about it this way. If total cholesterol is the number of cars on the highway, and I used this example previously in another podcast. So if total cholesterol is the number of cars on the highway, LDL particle is the number of those cars that are subcompact, poorly made, and prone to accidents. And NPO is the ambulance siren telling you accidents are already happening. Okay, so I used it a little bit differently before, but let me tell you that again. So if total cholesterol is the number of cars on the highway, LDL particle is the number of those cars that are subcompact, poorly made, and prone to accidents. And in her case, prone to a cardiovascular event. And NPO, myeloperoxidase, is the ambulance, it's the siren telling you accidents are already happening, because it's active inflammation in the vasculature that's already happening. Here's why this matters so profoundly in the context of a GLP-1 therapy. When women are under-eating protein, the body breaks down muscle, not just for fuel, but also it releases inflammatory byproducts. And I don't think a lot of people know that. When the thyroid is suppressed, lipid metabolism is impaired and LDL particle production increases. And this is a correlation that, I'll be honest, I stumbled upon this because I had some patients who were just having crazy increases in their cholesterol despite changes in their diet. And the only common denominator was their thyroid. And there is a direct relationship between lipid metabolism, it gets impaired, and LDL particle production increases if the thyroid isn't working, especially when it's suppressed. So when cortisol is chronically elevated, it promotes the formation of small, dense LDL particles, the dangerous kind that we talked about. And if you don't know about those, go back and listen to the cardiovascular risk, the 5 markers to know your cardiovascular risk. That podcast is, I think, episode number 5. So let's go back. When cortisol is chronically elevated, it promotes the formation of small, dense LDL particles, the dangerous kind, and increases NPO activity, which is inflammation in the vasculature. So Diane is losing weight by the scale. It plateaued, but she may be getting metabolically worse beneath the surface. This is the most important reason why GLP-1 therapy without comprehensive metabolic monitoring is not good enough. You can't just take a medication and think it's like a magic pass to help in wellness. And I have this conversation every day because they are amazing tools, but they are not the only tool in the toolbox. And you cannot fix things with just one tool, okay? LDL particles 1435 are high. Optimal is below 1,000. Elevated LDL particle count is a stronger predictor of cardiovascular events than LDL cholesterol alone. NPO elevation is active vascular inflammation. Endothelial damage is occurring and not corrected by weight loss alone. Protein-adequate GLP-1 users show improved lipid particle profiles. Protein-deficient users show worsening despite weight loss. Thyroid optimization directly improves LDL receptor activity in the liver. Correcting low T3 alone can reduce the number of LDL particles meaningfully. And omega-3s, EPA, DHA, one of my favorite supplements, it's a foundational supplement, 2 to 4 grams a day has shown to reduce LDL particle number, lower your MPO activity, and reduce triglycerides substantially. Okay? The scale is only one data point. Please remember that. Your particle count, your inflammation, your thyroid, those are all numbers that predict the next 10 years of your life, not just the scale. Okay, the clinical plan. Fix the foundation first. That's always important. The priority by priority roadmap I'm going to give you, and you can use this on yourself, but you should have your numbers checked. Okay, and you should know if this applies to you before you, again, this isn't medical information. This is education. You should see your provider. Okay, this is the part I want you to write down because what I'm going to walk through is a sequence that matters. This is not a throw everything at it approach. This is a specific order of operations because in functional medicine, what I've learned as teaching my colleagues is that sequence is strategy. So when and how we do something matters more than even what we do. So priority number 1, rebuild the metabolic foundation, protein first. Before we talk about medications, before we talk about hormones, before we talk about anything else, we have to get protein right. This is the single most important intervention for GLP-1 plateau. Not a higher dose, not a different medication. It's simple. It's just protein. Target 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily. It's non-negotiable. Practical translation for, let's say, a 150-pound woman, approximately 82 to 102 grams of protein per day and distributed across multiple meals. Protein timing, at least 30 grams at breakfast. This sets the metabolic tone for the entire day and it reduces hunger-driving hormones. And I'll have to tell you, this was a hard one for me who's not on a GLP-1. I'm not really a breakfast eater, but I started making myself eat breakfast. The more research I did and the more I counseled my patients, it's so important. It does set the day, set the tone. Protein sources, think about complete proteins. So eggs, chicken, fish, Greek yogurt, collagen, peptides. Actually, I don't think collagen peptides can be counted towards your total protein, but there are all kinds of sources out there. And try to stay away from protein bars with higher grams of sugar. So more than 10 grams of sugar, probably stay away from them. I mean, I'll be honest, I use protein bars because sometimes it's the only way I can get all my protein in if I'm busy. Hydration, a minimum of 80 to 100 ounces of water daily. Dehydration mimics hunger and worsens cortisol signaling. So you actually will eat more if you're thirsty. Here's a clinical reality. I have seen women on GLP-1 medications get their weight moving again with zero medication change simply by getting protein to target my goal. The medication was never the problem, but the fuel was. So it's the very first place that we start. It's the very first question we ask. We have foundational questions that we go through with all of our patients on GLP-1. They're even in our refill forms because they're so important for their success. And it takes a while for patients to pick up on that sometimes, but definitely protein is number 1. Okay, priority number 2, restore thyroid signaling. So in her case, thyroid was a big component. So with a free T3 of 2.5, Diane's metabolic furnace is running at a fraction of its capacity. Fixing this requires 2 things: optimizing the conversion environment. So remember, I told you T4 converts to T3. And if that's not enough, working to get her liothyronine dose adjusted, which is what she was on. T3 conversion optimization requires adequate protein, there's that P word, reduced inflammation, cortisol control, and she, in her case, needed some selenium, and we supplemented with 200 micrograms a day. And I've said this before, please have your selenium level checked before you start supplementing because there is such a thing as selenium toxicity, and you will not know if you're toxic if you don't know what your levels are. Target her free T3 above 3.2 as a minimum. Optimal, like I said, is 3.5 to 4.2 for metabolic function. And her T3 medication, liothyronine, we adjusted it. So we did incremental increases and repeated her labs at 8 weeks to make sure that her level was in the optimal range. The key clinical insight here is that adding a stimulant medication like phentermine, which I've seen happen, without fixing a low T3 is like pressing the accelerator in a car with a clogged fuel line. That's how I describe it. I have a lot of car analogies. I don't know why. You're not going to get where you want to go. You're going to strain the engine. So basically, and I've seen this, and I would say early on in my career, I may have even done this, where I've added something like phentermine, which is an FDA-approved medication for weight loss. But what I've learned is that, again, foundations are key. So take care of the foundational things first. It might be necessary later on, but it's not when you haven't even fixed thyroid first. Okay, so remember, adding a stimulant medication or any medication to a patient who has thyroid dysfunction is like pressing an accelerator in your car and you have a clogged fuel line. The car's not going to go anywhere. Your engine is just going to be strained. Okay, priority number 3, address cortisol and stress physiology. So Diane stopped her cortisol support and she got worse. The solution it's not complex, but it requires consistency. And we all get pill fatigue. So that's why I'm very intentional about what supplements I put my patients on. And I try to make sure that list isn't too long. So we did resume her cortisol support supplement. It gives her adaptogenic support. And these typically have things like ashwagandha, phosphatidylserine, rhodiola. So these are just examples. Everyone prefers a different type of cortisol support. I'm not here to talk about which one or which supplements, because again, that's something you should talk to your provider about. But the supplements, they help buffer the HPA axis response to chronic stress. Okay, what else did I ask her to do in addressing her cortisol stress physiology? Morning light exposure, 10 minutes within 30 minutes of waking. It does reset the cortisol rhythm. It reduces evening and overnight cortisol spikes. 3, phosphatidylserine is one of my favorite cortisol reducing supplements. I will talk about that at 200 to 400 milligrams at night. Specifically has shown to blunt cortisol-driven sleep disruption. And actually one of my other favorite supplements, and I think this one is a foundational supplement, magnesium glycinate, magnesium glycinate, 400 milligrams at night. It reduces cortisol. It supports deep sleep. It reduces fluid retention. Driven by, remember that aldosterone excess that I talked about, what you have when you have excess fluid retention due to cortisol. And then the last thing is post-meal walks. So 10 or up to 15 minutes after meals, just walking. It reduces cortisol-driven glucose spikes. It improves insulin sensitivity, and it meaningfully supports weight loss momentum. It is such a simple thing to do. In reality, I tell my patients, I would rather you do 3 10 or 15-minute walks a day after you eat, then go to the gym for 30 minutes. Like, you're going to get more out of it because it's working in real time to help reduce your glucose and your insulin. Okay, I want to say something about stress that rarely gets said in the medical setting. The stress load that high-achieving women carry is physiologically real. Work from home or not, with constant demands, I tell my women, my patients, my female patients, it's not a mindset problem. It's a cortisol problem. It needs to be treated. Like, you have to treat the stress that goes on in your life because it does affect you. And we don't really talk about it. So I would say at our practice, we talk about it a lot. Again, it's one of those foundational questions that we ask our patients all the time. Okay, priority number 4, pause on adding additional medication. So something in Diane's care plan that gave me pause was the instinct to add more medication, whether it's phentermine or metformin or another medication to help with weight loss on top of the GLP without first fixing protein, thyroid, and cortisol. It's like treating a symptom and ignoring the mechanism in which created that. So let's talk about phentermine because it is a stimulant and it stimulates the adrenal system. It increases dopamine and norepinephrine. And in a patient who already has cortisol dysregulation, adding an adrenal stimulation risks worsening that HPA axis dysfunction. It worsens or increases the risk of sleep disturbance and making the adaptive plateau, like, it's going to make it worse. So she's going to have even a harder time losing weight because it messes up that HPA axis. So it doesn't resolve the problem. So again, it's treating the symptom and ignoring the mechanism. So this medication may have a role, but only after metabolic foundation is solid. So GLP-1s plus phentermine combination shows modest additional weight loss in some patients, but increases heart rate, sleep disruption, and adrenal load. So you have to be careful with whom you use it and why. And phentermine is most effective when protein is adequate, thyroid is optimized, and cortisol is stable. But it's not a first response to a plateau in weight loss. Okay, priority number 5. Address the libido root cause and do it in the right order. So zero libido in a woman with low testosterone, low progesterone, and on an antidepressant that's known to suppress her sexual function is not really a mystery here, at least for a physician that does the work that I do. But the solution requires, honesty and proper sequencing. So step 1, have an open conversation with your doctor about your medications and ask them, do my medications cause weight gain? Do my medications cause libido suppression? Like, you have every right to ask that. There are alternative antidepressants with lower sexual side effect profiles. Wellbutrin, which is bupropion, for example, is associated with improved libido, and it's weight neutral, so it doesn't cause weight gain or weight loss. You want to optimize the thyroid and cortisol first. Both directly suppress testosterone and libido when they're dysregulated. Step 3, consider low-dose testosterone optimization. You can use a cream, you can use a pellet, you can use an injection. Those are my 3 mainstays. They do have troches. I'm not a big fan of troches, but because they have such high spikes in serum levels. But cream, pellet, or injection. And we target free testosterone in the upper quartile of a normal range for a woman. And then step 4, add progesterone support. Cyclic or continuous, depending on her cycle status, whether or not she's having a period, which reduces fluid retention and improves sleep quality tremendously. I've seen this, and supports mood alongside with libido. And then testosterone is the hormone of desire. So progesterone is the hormone of calm, and both matter. They matter a lot, but neither will be fully effective if cortisol is flooding the system and SSRI is blocking the receptor. So you have to take care of those 2 things. Priority number 6, cardio-metabolic cleanup. This is the longer game plan, but it starts now, and it has to be discussed in a person who's on a weight loss plateau. So omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, I'd say 2 to 4 grams a day, reduces LDL particle count, lowers NPO, reduces triglycerides, and has direct anti-inflammatory effects on the vessel wall. So I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of good quality omega-3 fatty acids. Increase dietary fiber, 25 to 35 grams a day. It reduces LDL particle number through the bile acid sequestration, supports gut health, and cortisol metabolism. So you'll hear me podcast after podcast talk about fiber. Fiber. You cannot get enough fiber. And then vitamin D3, 5,000 IUs a day with food, and I always recommend D3 with K2. It will correct her level of 28 to a target of 60 to 80, closer to 80. Vitamin D directly modulates LDL receptor activity and immune-mediated inflammation, so it's so important in getting her healthy. And then we recheck her LDL particles and her NPO about 3 to 4 months after metabolic correction. And I would expect a meaningful change and improvement in her thyroid and also her inflammation numbers. Okay, so your action plan, what do you do this week? Here are 7 steps for women on a GLP-1 and women who aren't. So it applies to both. So it's really important that you realize that, because I think sometimes we're like, well, I'm not on a GLP-1 and, but I'm on a weight loss plateau. And so it's important that you hear these. Whether you're on a GLP-1 or not, whether you're dealing with a plateau or not, or just feeling like your body is working against you, honestly, these steps apply to everyone. So here's your roadmap. And if you're doing them, check the box. So number 1, track your protein for 1 week. No calories, just protein. Use a free app like Chronometer or MacroFactor. I guarantee most of you will be shocked at how far below target you actually are. For a 150-pound woman, target is roughly, again, 85 to 100 grams of protein per day. And if you're on a GLP-1 and eating 1,200 calories of crackers and soup, you're burning your own muscle. And so please stop that. Okay, number 2, ask for a complete thyroid panel, not just a TSH. Use these exact words with your doctor. I'd like a free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and TSH, as well as TPO antibodies added to my next blood draw. If your doctor says TSH is all you need, that's information too. A TSH of 2.8 with a free T3 of 2.5 means your metabolism is running low. You deserve to know that. So if they won't check a full panel, it's like checking 1 tire out of 4, or in this case, our 2 spares as well, then you find a functional medicine doctor that will. Okay, number 3, evaluate your medications honestly. If you're on an antidepressant and you have zero libido and you can't lose weight and you generally are putting in all the effort to do the right things, then have a conversation with doctor who prescribed it. Ask about the side effects. Do your own research because it might be one of the medications that's causing you not to have libido. And there are a plethora of medications out there that can help you. And also there's opportunities to get off medications. Step 4. Take sleep seriously. It is a cortisol intervention. I always say sleep is the only thing that I can give you that you don't have to pay for, that costs you nothing, that will lower your cortisol. Diane's puffiness got worse with poor sleep because poor sleep spikes cortisol, which holds on to water, which causes us to hold on to water, which blocks fat loss. So start with magnesium glycinate, 400 milligrams before bed, and 10 minutes of outdoor morning light within 30 minutes of waking. These are not what I call luxuries. They're hormonal medicine as well. Okay, step number 5. Add omega-3s if you haven't. 2 to 4 grams of EPA and DHA daily. Not flaxseed oil, but fish oil or algae-based omega-3s with EPA and DHA directly. I'm a big fan of flaxseed. I use it all the time, but I want you to have algae or fish oil for the EPA and DHA. These address LDL particle count, vascular inflammation, and support thyroid hormone conversion. It's one of the highest value supplements in any woman's protocol. It just lowers even general inflammation. Okay, number 6. If you're on a GLP-1, do 10 minutes of walking after your 2 largest meals of the day. Start there. This is not optional, but it's cardiovascular advice. This is metabolic medicine. Post-meal walking reduces glucose spikes by 20 to 30%. It improves insulin sensitivity and counteracts the cortisol-driven metabolic slowdown that we see when patients are using a GLP-1. Step number 7. Ask your doctor to check your LDL particle and NPO. And honestly, I want them to check all 5. So they're going to check a Lp(a), a apolipoprotein B, LDL particle, NPO, myeloperoxidase, and oxidized LDL. And not just the standard cholesterol panel, which you still need. If you're losing weight and feeling good about your labs, but nobody's checked your cardiovascular system, you could have vascular inflammation and you could have cardiovascular issues even despite the fact that you're losing weight, okay? You're driving what I call without a speedometer, so you need to know. The Advanced Cardiometabolic Panel exists, and you can ask for it by name, and I think it's in podcast number 5 at Cardio IQ. Okay, so remember, you're not failing at your GLP-1. The GLP-1 is failing to get support from the system it needs. So the GLP-1 works best in a good system. Fix the system, and the medication can do the job it's supposed to do. Okay, so a few closing, what I call teaching pearls. I want to leave you with one thing I want you to carry out of this episode. Weight loss plateaus on a GLP-1 medication are almost never solved by adding more medication or increasing your dose even. They are usually solved by going upstream to the protein that's too low, maybe the thyroid that's suppressed and not working properly, or even the stress that's causing your cortisol system to be running in emergency mode, and usually for many years. Okay, so Diane came in being told that her only option was to increase her dose or go on a stimulant medication. But her body wasn't resistant to weight loss because she needed more pharmaceuticals. It was resistant because it was underfueled, thyroid suppressed, cortisol flooded, and hormonally depleted. So those are all important, I would say, foundational things that you need to know if you're trying to lose weight. So our medical system, I think, is incredible at finding individual problems, but what it often misses is the pattern. The way that low protein, low T3, and high cortisol stacked on top of each other create a biological environment where no medication, honestly, can fully succeed and no efforts can fully succeed. That's what functional medicine is really about. We like to see patterns. We like to look at systems. What's the right order to treat things using the right tools? And we have many tools in our toolbox. So if you're on a GLP-1 medication, it's not working the way you hoped, I will hope that you will do some more investigation, get a better roadmap, get your thyroid checked, get your cortisol checked, make sure that your metabolism is working, make sure you eat enough protein. These are all things that are fixable. If this episode spoke to you, share it with a woman who's been told her plateau is just part of the process in losing weight. It doesn't have to be. And if you want to dig into your own labs or connect with our team, you can find us. See you next week. Your body, remember, is always working for you. Just give it the right inputs.
Thanks for joining us today on Midlife Clarity with Dr. Tracy Page. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes where we continue to break down the science, the myths, and the mindset shifts around hormones, perimenopause, menopause, metabolism, and the strength for women over 40, so you can feel like yourself again, maybe even better than before. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Midlife health becomes easier when we stop whispering about hormone changes and start having informed, honest conversations. Before we go, a quick reminder. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. It does not replace a consultation with your own physician or qualified healthcare provider. Always seek professional medical guidance regarding your personal health concerns. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, clarity changes everything.